An emergency room, a patient covered in blood, glass shards embedded in skin, the doctor shouting contradictory orders while time slips through our fingers. That's when I heard the words no nurse should ever hear. You'll only make it worse. But I didn't back down. In seconds, I did what years of experience had taught me. What happened that night changed everything. My career, my relationship with that doctor, and the way the entire team saw me. This is my story. And it begins long before that emergency. My name is Helen Cartwright, and I never imagined I would become a nurse. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, where everyone knew everyone, and opportunities were limited. My father worked at the local factory, and my mother cleaned houses to make ends meet. We didn't have much, but we had each other. When I was 12 years old, my younger brother had a severe asthma attack. I watched a nurse at the county hospital save his life with calm precision, while my parents panicked. That moment planted a seed in my heart. I wanted to be that person, the one who stayed calm when everything fell apart. Years later, I moved to Chicago to attend nursing school. It wasn't easy. I worked nights at a diner, studied during breaks, and survived on coffee and determination. My instructors were tough, demanding perfection in every procedure, but I learned. I absorbed everything like a sponge. After graduation, I landed a job at County General Hospital, one of the busiest emergency rooms in the city. That's where my real education began. If this story has already grabbed your attention, go ahead and subscribe to the channel now, because what comes next will surprise you even more. My first years in the emergency room were brutal. Nothing prepares you for the weight of holding someone's life in your hands. I remember my first trauma case, a construction worker who fell 3 stories. His body was broken, blood everywhere, and his eyes searching mine for reassurance I wasn't sure I could give. I assisted the senior nurse, following her lead, watching how she moved with purpose and speed. She taught me that hesitation kills. In emergency medicine, you have seconds to make decisions that will determine if someone lives or dies. I saw things that still haunt me. Children brought in after car accidents, overdose victims barely breathing, gunshot wounds that turned the floor into a war zone. But I also saw miracles, hearts that started beating again, patients who walked out when everyone thought they wouldn't make it. I developed thick skin, but underneath, I felt everything. Every loss carved a piece out of my soul. Every save filled me with a purpose I had never known before. The other nurses became my family. We covered for each other, cried together in supply closets, and celebrated small victories over cheap pizza at 2 in the morning. Thank you for staying with me this far. It shows you feel what I felt when I lived through all of this. So subscribe now and turn on notifications, because what comes next changes everything. Working in an emergency room means navigating complicated dynamics. There are hierarchies that determine who speaks and who listens. Doctors make the final calls, but nurses are the ones who see everything first. We're the ones at the bedside, monitoring vitals, catching changes before they become catastrophes. Some doctors respect that, others don't. Dr. Marcus Brennan was one of the difficult ones. He had been at County General for 15 years, brilliant, but arrogant. He treated nurses like assistants rather than colleagues. I had several run-ins with him during my first 2 years. Once, he yelled at me in front of a patient's family because I questioned his dosage order. I was right, by the way, but that didn't matter to him. The other nurses warned me to just stay quiet around Brennan, to follow orders and not make waves, but that went against everything I believed. I became a nurse to advocate for patients, not to be silenced. Still, I learned to pick my battles. I documented everything carefully, followed protocols to the letter, and built relationships with the doctors who valued teamwork. The tension with Brennan simmered beneath the surface, waiting for the moment it would boil over. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this story from? Write it in the comments. It's amazing to see people from so many places following stories like this. And if you're connecting with this, subscribe to the channel. These real-life stories need your support. It was a Friday night in October, the kind of shift where you know chaos is coming. The moon was full, the city restless. We had already handled 2 stabbings, a severe allergic reaction, and an elderly woman with chest pain. I was exhausted but alert, running on adrenaline and muscle memory. Then the call came through dispatch. Multi-vehicle accident on the interstate. Multiple casualties incoming. We prepared the trauma bays, laying out supplies, double-checking equipment. The first ambulance arrived. Paramedics rushed in with a man on a stretcher, late 30s, unconscious, covered in blood. His car had flipped twice before hitting a barrier. The windshield had exploded on impact. Glass shards were embedded across his face, neck, and upper chest. Some pieces were deep, others superficial, but blood was everywhere. It was impossible to tell how bad the injuries were underneath all that red. His vitals were dropping, blood pressure falling, heart rate climbing. We needed to stabilize him immediately, but the glass complicated everything. One wrong move and we could sever an artery or push a shard deeper into critical tissue. Dr. Brennan rushed into the trauma bay, still pulling on his gloves. He took one look at the patient and started barking orders. Start 2 large large bore IVs. Type and cross for 6 units. Get a chest x-ray. His commands came fast but scattered. I could see him calculating, trying to assess the damage through all the blood. I moved to the patient's left side, preparing to begin removing the superficial glass from his arm so we could get better IV access. That's when Brennan's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Step back, Cartwright. You'll only make it worse." I froze. Every eye in the room turned to me. The other nurses stopped what they were doing. The respiratory therapist paused mid-setup. Brennan's face was red, his jaw tight. "This patient needs a surgeon, not a nurse playing hero. Get out of the way." The words stung, but it was the tone that hurt most. Dismissive, condescending, public humiliation. My hands trembled slightly, but I didn't move. I looked at the patient. His lips were turning pale. His breathing was shallow. We didn't have time for egos or protocols. We had seconds, not minutes. I made a choice. I ignored Brennan's order. My training kicked in, overriding everything else. I grabbed a pair of forceps and began working systematically. I identified the superficial shards first, the ones causing bleeding but not embedded in critical structures. I removed them with steady hands, applying pressure immediately after each extraction. The bleeding slowed. I grabbed sterile gauze, packing the wounds efficiently. My movements were precise, almost mechanical. Years of experience guided every decision. Remove, pack, pressure, remove, pack, pressure. Within 30 seconds, I had cleared his left arm and neck. The bleeding was under control. I established the IV line on the first attempt. Fluid started flowing. His blood pressure stabilized slightly. The room was silent except for the monitors beeping. Brennan stood frozen, watching me work. I moved to the chest area, carefully extracting 3 larger pieces of glass from his upper torso. One was dangerously close to the subclavian artery, but I could see it hadn't penetrated. I removed it with controlled precision, immediately applying a pressure dressing. 45 seconds. That's all it took. The patient's color improved. His vitals began to stabilize. And the silence in that trauma bay was deafening. Brennan stared at the patient, then at me, then back at the monitors showing improving vital signs. The other nurses exchanged glances, some impressed, others worried about what would happen next. I had openly defied a doctor's direct order in front of the entire team. That kind of insubordination could end a career, but I had also just saved a life. The respiratory therapist gave me a small nod of approval. One of the junior nurses whispered, "That was incredible." The patient coughed slightly, a good sign. He was beginning to stabilize enough for transport to surgery. Brennan finally spoke, his voice quieter now, stripped of its earlier anger. "Get him to OR 2. Tell them he's stable for transport." He didn't look at me, he didn't apologize, but he didn't write me up either. As the team wheeled the patient out, I stood there, my hands still covered in blood, my heart pounding. I had crossed a line. The question was whether it would be celebrated or punished. The shift continued, but everything felt different. Word spread quickly through the emergency department about what had happened. The next few days were strange. Nurses who had never spoken to me before stopped me in hallways to say they had heard what I did. Some called me brave, others warned me to be careful, that Brennan had ended careers over smaller offenses. I expected to be called into the nursing director's office, to face some kind of formal reprimand, but the call never came. Instead, something unexpected happened. 3 days after the incident, Brennan approached me during my shift. The emergency room was unusually quiet, giving us a rare moment without chaos. He stood next to me at the nurse's station, reviewing a chart. Without looking up, he said, "The patient from Friday night. He's going to make it. Full recovery expected." I nodded, not sure where this was going. Then he added, "You were right. I was too cautious. Sometimes protocol gets in the way of instinct." It wasn't exactly an apology, but coming from Marcus Brennan, it was close. The dynamic between us shifted after that. He started asking for my input during difficult cases. He stopped dismissing my observations. Other doctors noticed the change and began treating me with more respect too. And that night forced me to confront something I had been avoiding, the weight of the choices we make in split seconds. I kept replaying the moment in my mind. What if I had been wrong? What if I had caused more damage? The confidence I felt in the moment gave way to doubt in the quiet hours afterward. I called my mother that weekend, something I hadn't done in months. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, the way she always did. When I finished, she said something that stayed with me. "Helen, you became a nurse because you couldn't stand by and watch people suffer. That night, you were exactly who you needed to be." She was right. I had spent years developing skills, learning, practicing, preparing for moments like that. Trusting my training wasn't arrogance, it was necessary. I thought about all the times I had held back, stayed silent, deferred to others even when I knew better. How many patients had suffered because I was too afraid to speak up. That night in the trauma bay wasn't just about saving one life, it was about finding my voice in a system that often tries to silence nurses. And the incident changed my career in ways I never expected. Within 6 months, I was promoted to senior trauma nurse. The administration recognized that my quick thinking had prevented a potential disaster and wanted that kind of decisiveness on the team. Brennan and I developed a working relationship built on mutual respect rather than hierarchy. He even recommended me for an advanced trauma certification program. But the biggest change was internal. I stopped apologizing for my expertise. I spoke up in meetings. I challenged decisions that didn't make sense. I mentored younger nurses, teaching them that their instincts matter, that years of bedside experience give them knowledge that no textbook can provide. The patient I saved that night, his name was Thomas Reed, sent me a letter 3 months later. He thanked me for giving him a second chance at life, for acting when others hesitated. He included a photo of himself with his 2 daughters. That photo still sits on my locker. It reminds me why I do this work, why I chose to become a nurse, why I'll never stop fighting for my patients, even when it means breaking the rules. That night taught me that sometimes the most important thing a nurse can do is trust herself. That was my story, a story of decisions made in split seconds, of trusting your own experience, even when everyone doubts you. Now I want to know what you think. Have you ever been through a moment when you had to choose between following orders or doing what you knew was right? Leave your opinion in the comments. And if this story touched you in any way, subscribe to the channel. There are many more real and intense stories like this waiting for you. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next recommended video. I guarantee it will be worth it.